Hello, everyone. Pastor Tommy McMurtry back again. Appreciate you joining me this week. This is the second week doing a live stream talking directly to men and hoping this will be a blessing. I got some pretty good feedback from the last one, and I'm glad it was able to be a help and a blessing, and hope to continue to do this. And I'm going to get right into today's subject. I want to talk about something that it's kind of a difficult thing to articulate and to put into words to get the proper message out. But with the Lord's help, hopefully I can get this across to you today without saying things that could easily be taken the wrong way and you can go to different extremes on. But you've probably seen the title where I said, "Go Subdue the Earth," is what I titled this week's. And in Genesis chapter 1, the very beginning of the Bible, we see in verse 27, it says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." So right there, instructions from God, right at the very beginning, before even the fall of man, we see that God wanted man to subdue the earth. Now, we don't use that word a whole lot today, but to subdue, it means to tread down or to conquer, to subjugate, to bring into bondage, or to bring into subjection. That's what we see in the Hebrew definition, and the more modern dictionary, it says to conquer and bring into subjection. There's several different definitions, but I think this goes along with what God was talking about there. Another definition has to bring land under cultivation, or to subdue the wilderness. One thing that we know about this planet that we live on is there are many challenges that are out there. We have rivers that can be an obstacle, but we have also learned how to take these things and to use them. And that's an important thing too. God wants us to, have control over this land. God made this land or this earth for us. And you have these environmentalists out there that act like we're just ruining everything. They've got a problem with us, tapping into the resources of this earth. You've got your environmentalists out there, or not your environmentalists, your animal rights people that want us all going vegan and not eating any of the animals. Listen, that is not the case. God made this earth for us, and he wants us to subdue it. And you know what? I think it's appropriate for us to go and make roads and to cut down trees and to get oil. Obviously, we do want to be good stewards. We don't want to be reckless. We don't want to just go destroying this planet. We don't want to just mess everything up. I do believe we ought to be responsible, but subduing that land is something that God gave man to do. And I do believe that you can say mankind as a whole has been very successful in this area. I mean, we have subdued this land for the most part. I mean, look at how easy it is to just survive now. We have running water all over the place. We have, we just have acres and acres and acres, or I should say square miles of just farmland that is very good for growing food. And man, they cleared that land. They removed those obstacles, and we've made machines that's made it possible for us to do all these things. When it comes to exploration, we're able to get places very easy. It is so easy for us today to travel across country. We can, and even across the world. We've got airplanes and we've built runways all over this world, and we can get to very remote places fairly easily. How are we able to do that? Because man has subdued the earth. And so man in general, I do believe we've done a very good job of this. I think that's something that, man can look at and say, hey, we've done that. We have been fruitful and multiplied. I mean, we've got billions of people on this earth. So as a whole, mankind has done some of these commandments. But I'm not talking to mankind as a whole today. I want to talk to you as individual men. And I want to point out some things that are in you, that are a part of your nature, that I'm afraid people don't often understand. And some of these things that are in our nature, okay, there are many things that are in us as men that are not necessarily sinful. However, those things can cause us to sin because of the fact that we are sinful people. And often, instead of just teaching man how to walk in the Spirit, how to get control over his flesh, and how to just subdue his flesh, we end up just trying to suppress things that are in man that in and of themselves are not bad. These are actually good things. And I think if we understand, what's driving men to do some of the things they do, I think it'll help us guide them also. And especially too, I'm talking to parents when it comes to raising your kids, okay? And I know this is for men, but this might help some moms, who are raising their boys too, to help them kind of understand some things. So, I am not a philosophical person. Like I said, I'm used to more preaching mode, but that's not what I want to do. I don't want to just preach a sermon to you right now. I guess I just want to talk to you and try to explain some things. And as I was preparing for this, I just kind of had some flashbacks to different things in my life. One thing I got to thinking about as I was preparing this, when I was from ages about 2 to 7, I lived in Spring Valley, Illinois on East St. Paul Street. And I don't remember how old I was when this happened, but I remember I was probably only 5 or 6 years old. And I remember I would always sit on the couch and I would look out the window. That's something you see little kids do all the time. They're always like looking out the window. They want to know what's outside. And I remember on East St. Paul Street, we lived on the corner, and off to the right, as I would look out the window, there was this street, and there was a sign there that said dead end. And to this day, I still remember this because I remember I asked my dad what that dead end sign meant. And he said, it just means that the road ends there. And as a little kid, in my mind, I just pictured like this road just coming to this abrupt end and like this drop off, like it was the edge of the earth or something. That was just kind of what was in my head. And we never drove down that street because, we always drove off to the left where the church was and, or straight forward to the left of that, to go into town. But we never really went down the road because it was all residential. It was all houses. But I was always so curious about that road as a kid. I always wondered what it looked like back there. I always wondered what kind of the edge of the earth looked like. And that's just what was in my mind as a little kid. And so we moved away from there when I was 7. But, fast forward almost 10 years, I've now got a driver's license. And I'm able to drive around. And I remember I was driving my car in Spring Valley, and I went and I drove by our old house. And I remember thinking, I wonder what it does look like. By then I knew dead end didn't mean the end of the world. But because I had this picture in my mind of what it looked like down that road for so long, I had to go drive down there and see what it looked like. And let's just say it was very disappointing. It was just all houses. The road just ended. No big deal. But, what was going on when I'm looking out that window? All right. There was something in little kids. They just want to explore. They want to get out of the house. Some of you moms can't figure out why your little boy and even your little girl sometimes is always wanting to escape from the house. There is something in them that wants to explore, that wants to see the world. They want to know what's out there. And while we know what's outside, while we know the dangers and while we know it's not even that exciting, for them it's very exciting because it's unknown. Just Sunday after church, I took Hannah and I went and I stepped outside and it was nice out and I just kind of put her down and she just got this excited look on her face because she was outside and all of a sudden kind of had some freedom. And she went and she's kind of walking off a little bit and just looking at me. And she's just real excited. She started getting excited, kind of going nuts. And then all of a sudden, I'm watching her. And then it was like, she's like, I'm getting some freedom. She wanted to go see the world. And she took off running, And obviously I had to go and I had, to stop her because of the dangers out there. But why did she want to do that? Because little kids, they want to know what's out there. It's in us to want to know what is in the world. We want to explore. Even babies, you see that as they want to explore different parts of the house. They even put it on diapers and stuff. Little explorer. It is in us to want to do these things. And so understand what's happening though, because we have this, desire to explore and to find out the unknown and go to these places. Often that can cause us to put ourselves in danger. And I'm afraid what's happening today, we are so afraid of dangers. We're so afraid of something bad happening. We're so afraid of our child getting hurt, getting a broken bone or something like that, that we end up just trying to suppress that desire to get out there. And we try to replace it with things that are fake and that, that to kind of give an illusion of that thrill of exploring, but it's just not the same. We'll put a video game in front of them. We'll let them go watch someone have an adventure on television rather than having their own adventure, because at least if they're having an adventure in their mind in front of their television or in front of a video game, they're not in danger. They can't get hurt. They're not going to cut themselves. They're not going to need stitches. They're not going to need a broken bone. And I'm afraid in us doing that, we're producing a man that is just not very manly. And so I'm not telling anybody today, just go let your kids do whatever they feel like doing. Let them explore, no restraints whatsoever. I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying recognize what's going on and then find a way to give them some satisfaction in their area. Go ahead and, if they're curious about something, just walking down to the end of a street is a big deal for a kid. I remember when I was living at that same house, if you went off to the left, only about 2 blocks down, I think it was a place called Johnson's Pharmacy, and they had a lot of candy and stuff in there. And I remember my dad, me and him, we went and walked there one time, and I thought it was just a big deal walking to a store, getting someplace on foot. It was only 2 blocks away. But as a little kid, it was a big deal to me. And I remember thinking, I walked all the way to this store, no help from my dad. He didn't have to carry me. I didn't have to take a car. I could go to this store. I've got some money. I could go buy some candy. And I remember telling my dad, I want to go to the store. I want to buy some candy. And I wanted to go by myself. I really wanted to do that. Now, I don't recommend letting your 5-year-old, walk down Main Street. I think I only had like one cross street that wasn't busy that I had to cross, but that was a main street to get there. And I remember, just being convinced I should be able to go to this candy store by myself. And I remember I asked my dad about it, and my dad's like, you know what? Go ahead. And I thought it was the biggest thing in the world. And man, I got my money together and I went walking to that store, and I went and bought some candy, and I came home and I felt like a man. I went to the store all by myself. Now, years later, my dad tells me he was following me the whole time, that, he never let me out of his sight through that whole thing, but what was he doing? He was allowing me the thrill. He was allowing me to have this desire to be independent and to go to this big magical place in the mind of a 5 or 6-year-old. He was allowing me that thrill, understanding, man needs that, without allowing me to go in danger and to be in danger. And because again, you can't just let your kids do whatever you want. That's not what I'm telling you. But I do want parents to understand there's not something wrong with your child if they're always wanting to run outside, if they're wanting to climb trees, if they're wanting to explore things, if they're wanting to run into the woods. There's not something wrong with them. That is a part of their nature, and it's actually a good thing. And so you need to try to find some ways to help them, accomplish these things without putting themselves in danger. You don't just want to suppress it. You don't just want to put them in front of a video game. You don't want to just tell them it's bad to do those things and there's something wrong with you if you want to do that. No, there's something right if they're wanting to do that kind of thing. And so we need to, from the time they're young, allow them to subdue some things, accomplish some things, go on a hiking trail, climb up a mountain, do something. That's always in us. And there's something in us that wants to explore. The picture that I had on the thumbnail of this and at the beginning of the video, that was of me and my boys on Camelback Mountain. Now, we're from Illinois. We don't have mountains, okay, out here. It's very flat out here. So, a few years ago, I can't remember what year, I think 2017, I went to Arizona for the first time, and I was there for a conference and didn't have time for any leisure activities. Everything was conference, but in driving back and forth the place, I kept seeing all these mountains, and I'm not used to being around mountains. And when I see a mountain, I just want to climb it. I wanted to climb a mountain so bad, but I just didn't have any time. And so it was the same thing too. I'd been there a couple times with just no time to do anything like that. And so finally, we were there for a family retreat, and there was a lot of stuff planned for that, and mountain climbing was not on the agenda. I guess if you live in Arizona, you're probably used to something like that. Anybody who lives in the Phoenix area has probably all went up Camelback Mountain a million times. It's no big deal. But it is a big deal when you're from Illinois and you never really climbed a mountain before. And so, me and the boys, we wanted to go climb a mountain. Why? Because it was there. And we did. We got up real early in the morning. There was going to be a later start to things that day. And I was like, we've got time. I was like, if we get up real early, if we get out there right as it's starting to get light, we'll have time to get up there and get back down. And we did. And you know what? We loved it. It was a great adventure. It was a great feeling getting to the top of that mountain. And, why did I need to do that? I needed to climb a mountain. Mountains are amazing things. There's something about mountains, even though you can see the top of it. And even though there's really nothing there at the top of the mountain, there's just something in us that I want to get there. There's something in us. I want to accomplish that. Somewhere at some point, mankind, they eventually spread out and they reached the ocean. And somewhere along the line, somebody got looking at that ocean and said, I want to know what's out there. And they started making ships and things, and they started exploring and, conquering the land. And then whenever they found these new places, somebody's like, I got to get down in that canyon and see what's down there. I got to get on top of that mountain and see what's up there. Or we're going to cross that mountain range and we're going to see what's on the other side. That is something that is in us, that is who we are. And you've got to understand that when you have that desire to subdue, there are dangers. But we are being told today, never allow yourself any danger. We're not meant to live that way. Okay? We're not meant to live that way. We were meant to explore. And there's obstacles, there's dangers, there's many things out there that can kill you. Okay? There's heat, there's cold, there's rivers, there's mountains, there's valleys, but you know what? We overcome those things. We figure out a way to conquer that. But some people today, they're so worried about somebody getting hurt. They've taken away even that ability to try to satisfy that need. And that's one thing too, here in Illinois, because some of the things that I'm going to bring up might seem kind of foreign to some of you, depending on where you live. Like I said, climbing a mountain. Some of you are probably thinking, that's just life. What are you talking about? I'm in Illinois. Okay. We don't have that out here. Another thing too, that's weird in Illinois, that it's not like this in other places, and I think this is one of the reasons our state is just got so many issues, got weak men. You're just not allowed to do anything in nature hardly. You are not allowed to swim in hardly any bodies of water in Illinois. And whenever I go to other states, I'm always surprised when I'll see people swimming in natural bodies of water with no lifeguards, no roped off areas, just doing their own thing. Cliff jumping, whatever. You can't do that stuff in Illinois. The closest lake we have to us, Lake Shavana, Me and my boys went out there to go fishing last year. We rented a boat out there. First off, they have governors on all their boats, so they can barely move at all. They don't go fast at all. It's no fun even riding those things around. You're not allowed to swim anywhere out there, and it's just like, this is stupid. You ought to be able to swim at your own risk. Now you say, well, why do they have all these rules and regulations? Well, because we don't want people drowning. And you know what? It's tragic when someone drowns, but people need to swim. People need to be out on the water, and they need to, conquer these things. Any of the nice parks we have, they've got all these trails, out here, like you go to Starved Rock, a lot of the trails, they've all got wood plank paths with railings on them everywhere you go. I mean, it's almost impossible to get hurt in some of these places. And, it takes away a lot of the fun. When I was, one of the trips we took to Arizona, we wanted to go kayaking in the Marble Canyon, which was awesome. But one of the things that blew me away when I was in Arizona is they don't have regulations on anything. I mean, when you go out there to the top of Marble Canyon, there's no railings anywhere. Anyone could just run and fall right off. And you say, well, what's the big deal about that? I live in Illinois. We have guardrails and safety things for everything. I was amazed when you're out there, you can pretty much just go wherever you want in that open land out there. You can camp wherever you want. You can go down into the river down there. You can go as far as you want. You can camp wherever you want. Out here, you're not allowed to do anything like that. Why? Because we don't want anybody getting hurt. And you know what? When we were out there too, I asked them, do people ever fall off that cliff? And they said yes. People fall off the cliff and they get killed sometimes. But and that's tragic when that happens. But you know what? That's life. There's always been challenges. There's always been tragedy. And what we're doing, we're suppressing this desire of man to go out and actually do something that will help make them a man. Men need to climb mountains. They need to do hard things. They need to get hurt sometimes and break a leg or whatever. They need to do all those things. But unfortunately, we're trying to stop all that stuff. In fact, we're being told as men, if we want to get out and conquer things, we're told by the government we can't do these things. We were all told we were terrible people if we wanted to go outside during a pandemic. I mean, think about, I remember when everything got shut down. I mean, everything was shut down. I'm trying to think of a nice word. Our governor, he decided to shut down all the state parks. We've got this one about 25, 30 minutes from us that we've gone hiking before. No one is ever out there. Every time we've ever been out there, I don't think I've seen another human being. And you know what? There just wasn't much to do. I mean, it's springtime. The kids need to be outside. They need to stretch their legs, need to do something. So we went out there to go walk the trails out there. And out in the middle of nowhere. And they had all these signs posted, saying not to go out there, closed due to pandemic, arrest if you get caught, all this kind of stuff. Just absolutely ridiculous. And they did. There's all this propaganda on TV telling people stay inside, stay indoors, don't do these things. All the parks, they took down all the swings and everything. They didn't want kids at the park. Kids need to be at parks. They need to be climbing. They need to be doing these things. And there's things that can happen. When you get involved in nature, there's things that can happen. You can fall, you can break your neck. There's so many bad things that can happen. But that's life. We were not meant to just hold all that stuff in. That need to explore, that need to climb on something. We need these things. And it is ridiculous watching society take away these things. I mean, and there's parents out there who won't let their kids go to the park because they're afraid they're going to get hurt. Oh, Johnny, don't go climbing on the slide. You might fall and break your arm. And you know what? I've seen kids fall from slides and break their arm. But arms heal. It's okay. If your kid gets a broken bone, that's bad. It's not a fun experience going to the hospital. But you know what? They're going to be all right. They're going to heal. And the damage that you're doing in just confining them in the indoors and not allowing them to just get out and do things that people have done since the beginning of time, it's producing a very weird product. And I'm telling you, what we are seeing being called men today is it's very off-putting and it's very disturbing. And I think we have a lot of this in places like Illinois too, where just everything is suppressed that's good. And again, I don't believe in being reckless. Okay, I don't believe in being reckless. Don't just let your boys go do whatever they feel like doing. If your 3-year-old boy is just wanting to run outside and you live on a busy street, obviously you don't let him do it. But you know what? Let him think he's exploring. Let him think he has some freedom. Take him out to a park. Take him out to a big open area and let him run. Let him run free. Let him get some distance between you. Keep him in sight where you can get to him quick if you need to. But, they need that kind of thing. It's a part of who they are, and suppressing it, it's bad. I think if we shut that down too much, we're creating more problems. And so we need to understand that, as fathers and mothers too, that little boy who desperately wants to escape from the house, it's just a part of his nature. It doesn't mean he's bad. It doesn't mean you need to take him to the doctor and get some medicine to calm him down. That just means he's a healthy boy. Okay? He obviously needs to learn to trust you. He needs to learn to obey because he doesn't understand the dangers that are out there. They're going to cry sometimes when you stop them. When they bolt for the street and you chase them down, you grab them, you spank them because you got to, they're going to be upset about that. And they've got to learn. But you know what? Try to give them those opportunities to at least let them think they're exploring, because it's a big deal in their mind. We're supposed to be explorers. We ought to, even as men, even growing up, go cave exploring. That was another thing when I was in Arizona. We went out to this one cave where you had to drive, I think 5 or 6 miles down like a dirt road. It wasn't even a paved road to get back to this cave. And when at the entrance of that cave, it was very icy and, and slippery. You had to be really careful getting down there. And folks, there were no staff anywhere. There was nobody. We saw a few other people, just tourists out there exploring, but they were leaving. We went back in that cave, and when you go all the way to the back of that cave, it's dark. It is dark. Out here, okay, we went to a cave in Iowa not too long ago. Now out here, the cave that we went to, it had like a ramp everywhere where you're supposed to walk, and it was lit up. Everything was lit up. And it was just, there was parts of the water. They have stepping stones and everything. And it makes it easy to go and look in the cave. But it's not the same as just a cave, how it's supposed to be in its natural wet form. And so we went back in this one, and it's not like Illinois caves or Iowa caves. There were no lights. And we didn't even have flashlights. The only thing we had was our cell phones that had flashlights on them. And so we were like making sure that we weren't all using them at the same time, because if our batteries ran dead, and we would have been trying to find our way back in the pitch black. You couldn't see a thing. And you don't have cell phone reception. We wouldn't be able to call anybody. If something happened to you down there, you're there until someone else comes out there and can tell you, and can send help. And who knows how long that would be. It did not look like a popular cave. So we saw a few people coming out when we went in. When we were in there, we were pretty much in there by ourselves the whole time. And I think when we came out, there might have been a couple more people getting ready to go in, if I remember right. But either way, that was kind of foreign to me. But you know what? It was also awesome too. I really enjoyed it. And they would never let that happen in Illinois because, someone might get hurt. What if you break your leg? What if this? What if that? Well, you know what? If we don't have stuff like that, if we don't allow people to at least feel like they're exploring something, and at least, get that feeling of some kind of accomplishment like that, you know what we're going to do? We're going to turn out a bunch of freaks and queers and people like we're turning out in this country right now who can't handle anything and who have no resemblance of real manhood. So again, too many parents are telling their kids, you can't do anything because of all these things that could possibly happen. But you got to understand what they're wanting to do, what they're looking to have satisfied is not really a bad thing. And I think you need to try to find a way to satisfy that. And I do think it's okay to, have a little bit of risk. And if your kid gets hurt, you haven't failed as a parent. Okay? And I've said it before, there's worse things that can happen to your kids than them breaking a leg. There's worse things that can happen to your kids than them dying. And that is becoming what some people are coming today. Turning into some kind of reprobate. And we wonder why there's just all this unnatural affection that's out there and just this unnatural behavior. I'll tell you why. It's because we don't behave naturally. So you've got to find some ways to satisfy these things, and let them do things that seem a little dangerous. They need to do that. We need to. Another thing too that's part of subduing the earth is farming. Okay, growing things. Conquering that land. We're supposed to farm land that we find, and mankind has done that. Mankind has accomplished that. Mankind has done some pretty amazing things with the land. But what about you? Okay, what about your child? And you know what? I think it's good to let them do something like grow a garden. I think it's good to let your boys go out and dig a hole. I remember when I was a kid too, that was one of my favorite things to do was to dig holes. Because you know what? You never know what you're going to find. And I think we forget as adults, when you're a child, in some ways the world is so much bigger. Because your world and your experience is very small. And so we can, as a kid, I was very, very curious, even just about what's in my backyard. And I wanted to dig holes in case I could find some old Indian artifact or something like that. Because I remember my dad, when he was planting a garden, actually found an arrowhead in our yard. And I just thought that was awesome. And I always wanted to dig holes just in case I found something like that. And, it's like, if my kid digs a hole, he's going to get dirty. Oh, well, let him get dirty. They need to do these things. They need to understand the land. They need, some people today, they don't even understand dirt. They've never experienced dirt. Do if your child, you could have a teenager. You could have a teenager today who's never experienced dirt. Why? Who would that be? A lot of people who live in cities. They live in these cities. They have, they're living in these apartments. Everything they ever do, where they ever go, where they walk, it's all paved. Everything's so sanitary. It's all clean. And it's like they've never actually experienced dirt. They've never dug a hole. They've never planted anything. They've never cut a tree down. And if you were raised in a city, you're probably taught you're like some kind of murderer if you've cut a tree down. We need to conquer these things. We need, young men, they need the experience of chopping wood. We need, I think there's something in us too. It's in our nature, because not only did man have to do these things to survive for so long, but I think there's something in us too that knows that the day might come where we're going to need to do these things again. There's a chance the grid could go down one of these days. And I think it helps us as men to know, if the grid goes down, I know how to survive. I know how to build a fire. I'm capable of chopping down firewood. I'm capable of going and hunting. I'm capable of living off the land. And obviously, we don't need to do these things, or we don't have to do these things to survive, but there's something in us that wants to do them. Now, I probably should have Pastor Boyle come on here sometime. One thing they do at their church every year is they call it their revival survival, where they just go out in the wilderness and live off the land for a few days. And they make a big game out of it. And it's like, why would men want to do that? It's just who they are. And when they go out there and they do that, it satisfies something in them. Going out and sleeping under the stars, under a tent, building a fire, eating something that you killed out there on the land, it satisfies something in man that needs to be satisfied. And there's all kinds of stuff that could happen. I mean, boy, you go out in the woods out here, you could get poison ivy. And you know what? I've gotten poison ivy several times, and it's terrible. I hate it. But, you know, it's okay. You know, you can, there's all kinds of things that can happen. You can get snake bit. You know, down there in Florida, you can get eaten by a gator or something like that. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen, but we're supposed to subdue the land. And God goes on in Genesis 2, after that, and he tells them to have dominion over the fowls of the air and over the beasts of the field, earth. We are supposed to have dominion over the animal. But, you know, you got that slothful man who says there's a lion in the streets. He's making an excuse to not have to go outside because there's a danger out there. And let me tell you something. There are dangers out there. But you know what we do as men? We overcome them. And there are wildernesses out there where there's animals that can kill us. So you know what we've done as man? We've made weapons. We've made things to kill them. And there was a time when men would hunt bears and things, so, you know, or they would shoot bears, I guess you could say, you know, not necessarily so much for hunting, but just because of the fact that they needed to get through the wilderness and it came after them, you know, so it was more of a survival thing. But, you know, part of it too, hey, we need that fur to keep us warm, because you know what? We need to conquer the cold. We need to figure out how to survive in the cold. And we've done that. Mankind has done that. You know, I live in Illinois and we survive the winter every year, you know, and it's not without a lot of great conveniences, but sometimes we might need to figure out how to survive those things without all this technology. Yeah. And so, you know, that stuff's in us. Now, again, man used to hunt out of necessity too, to eat. But you know what? Even today, hunting is still a very popular sport. And people get so offended. Oh, why are people hunting for sport? I don't understand that. You know why? Because, man, it's just in us to know we are supposed to subdue the world. That deer back there that's a lot faster than me, you know, I need to conquer that thing. Why? What did it do to you? It didn't do anything to me. But I need to do something to it. Why? Just, it's part of being a man. I need to catch that fish. I need to eat that fish. I need to do all these things, and we're supposed to train the animals to serve us. That's what man did with, you know, oxen. When men started riding horses and they used camels to get them across the desert, man's used man to help them survive and to help them explore. That's part of subduing. Mankind has done that. Now, have you done that? Okay. Now, you know, the truth is you've used animals, and I'm not trying to be mean right now, but I'm just trying to show everyone where we're at today. Some of you have, you know, you subdued a little puppy dog so it can be your emotional support animal. You know, that's the need, you know, it fulfills for you. I mean, that thing can't hunt. It can't guard against anybody. It can't do nothing, you know. We use them for companionship and stuff like that. And it's not wrong. It's not wrong to do that. But understand, man used to use animals, you know, for things like survival, for things like hunting, all that. People use hunting dogs and train them to do that kind of stuff. That's what we're supposed to do, you know. And, you know, kids naturally love animals. Sometimes they just want to kill them. You know, what's that all about? That's just that hunting instinct that's inside of them too. But you know what? They also like to just play with animals too. You know, they're interesting things. You know, boys are interested in dogs and horses and all that kind of stuff. Why? Because man's needed them throughout time. And, you know, they've tamed those wild stallions and things. Why? Because they needed them. They needed to use them. They've conquered them. And we ought to know how to do these things. It's in us to do that. But most people have never had an experience doing that. I mean, good night. You know, even pets. I mean, we had that thing, I think it was in the early 2090s, where, you know, people today are getting virtual pets. You know, now, why is that popular? Because there's something in us where we need to do something with animals. But we do everything in such a lame way. We do it all virtually. And it's just not the same thing. But understand, all these virtual things that we have, It's just evidence of something that is in all of us as man. And so, some things that I've noticed recently that are very popular and trending, especially, in the millennial and the generation and the Gen X generation. I am very negative towards the millennial generation. If you are in that age range, I'm not picking on you automatically. I don't hate you automatically, but the things that just, your stereotypical millennial, or Gen Zer, I think is absolutely revolting. But as revolting as these people are, they still have that same desire for all these things I'm talking about. And it's like society's figuring that out. And instead of changing as a society to fix these things, they're coming up with virtual things to give the illusion of giving that fulfillment as a way to make money off them. Okay. Now, for example, I'm not picking on anybody if you've done any of these things. I think they're fine. I haven't done some of them. If I get the opportunity, I probably will. Okay. I'm not against these things, but I want you to understand why these things are popular right now. I'm trying to help you understand yourself as a man. So, for example, escape rooms. Okay. Escape rooms are a big thing. I'm seeing people on social media all the time posting, hey, we got through this escape room. And it's always millennials and younger. I never see people, older than me posting that. I'm sure some do. If they are, they're with their millennial children that talked them into going to that. Why is that such a big deal to the millennials? I'll tell you why. Because they've never been in any kind of danger. They've never been in any kind of high stress situation. They've never been in a situation where they were fighting for survival. It's just never happened. They've never been cornered by an animal. They've never been, cornered, figuratively speaking, by nature, to where they were in some kind of danger and they had to do something extreme to survive. They've never had to do that. But mankind has had to do that kind of thing since the beginning of time. It's been pretty normal in a lot of ways. So what we do today is we simulate things. They'll put people in a room where they're pretending they're in some kind of danger and they've got so much time to, get out of this situation. And folks, that's fun. Okay. That kind of thing's fun. That's, I go paintballing sometimes. That's a similar thing too. Man has gone to war, since the beginning of time. There's something in us that wants to fight. And so we can't just go shooting each other just for the fun of it. So, what do? We go paintballing where we can shoot each other for the fun of it without there being any permanent damage done. And, and it hurts a little bit too. And that's part of the fun because we're not used to getting hurt. And some people won't go paintballing because it hurts getting shot with a paintball. That's kind of lame, but these are simulations trying to fulfill a need that is just in all man. And so those escape rooms, the other thing I've been seeing a lot that's real popular that is a fairly newer phenomenon, but people are going and doing all these axe throwing things. Okay. Now, I'm just going to say right now, I would probably do something like that if I went somewhere and they got axe throwing and everything. Yeah, it's fun throwing an axe. Now, I don't know how much they're paying for this. I guess I do understand it, but this need to film that and post it on social media is very telling to me. I'm not picking on you. You had fun, all right? You're allowed to post your fun things like that. But let's take myself, not a millennial. I'm more of a Gen Xer, okay? I'm somebody, too, who's actually thrown an axe outside. I'm somebody who's actually used an axe for the purpose that you use an axe. I've used it cutting down smaller trees. I've used it chopping firewood. And yes, even my big axe. There's been many times when I've been out in my yard, you get done, and you want to throw the axe and try to make it stick into a tree or something like that. Oh, you can't do that. You'll hurt the tree. So what? But that's the attitude we have. You can't do it. No. Men need to swing an axe. Men need to throw an axe. Men need to cut down a tree. And so the thing is, as somebody who's actually done some of those things, I don't know. I might go something like that just to test my accuracy and axe throwing and stuff like that. I'm sure that would be fun, but it's not a strong desire. It definitely wouldn't be a thrilling enough experience for me that I would feel like this is worthy of videoing and posting online, because of the fact that just like for some of you, climbing a mountain doesn't seem like it's worth taking a picture of because you've done it a million times. That kind of thing is not something I would need to do because, I've done that kind of stuff naturally. But I say all that to say, this is just one more thing that it's a simulation of an actual manly activity, of something that used to just be normal life for people. And obviously these things are popular to people because they're missing something in their life. And it's like, man, I would enjoy doing something like that. And you know what? You would enjoy doing something like that. In fact, I'll tell you right now, you would enjoy an axe even more if you went outside and you cut down a tree and started chopping firewood and were throwing axes at stuff outside. I think that would be a greater thrill for you if you did that. But, by all means, because you have that need, that desire, go ahead and do that. Okay. And enjoy yourself. I just want you to understand why you need it. Another thing too, I make fun of my boys, have done it a couple times. I went and did it with them and I had a good time. But I don't know if anybody's ever been to a Top Golf. Okay. Now I used to golf pretty regular. I haven't done a regular golfing game in over 10 years and I kind of miss it, but I always enjoyed it. And most of the time when I would go out golfing too, if I would go by myself, I would walk the course. I'd carry my bag, I'd walk the course. And I enjoyed being outside, hitting the golf ball around. It was a lot of fun. Okay. So, I'll golf on a cart too if I'm with other people. Most of the time when I've golfed, it's just more for fellowship, just doing something with somebody. I like it for that reason. But Top Golf, if you've ever been there, it's a driving range that is in a very nice place where while you're waiting to hit, you sit on a very comfortable couch. It's like your own personal lounge area. Okay? You go and you stick your golf club in front of a thing and a ball rolls out automatically. You do have to bend over and set it on a tee. I'm pretty sure they'll figure out how to avoid you going through that hassle. But then, you hit the ball and it's got a tracker in it. So you don't just have to watch where it goes. You've got a TV screen that shows you where it goes. And then it's got these gigantic areas that you're trying to hit into to get more points instead of the small hole. And then you never have to walk. You never have to move from there. The whole time you're there too, you can order sodas and things, and a lady will come and bring you your soda, and she'll keep bringing you refills and things, and you can get some food, and you can just sit there and you can stuff your face. It is the laziest form of golf I have ever seen in my life. And what's funny, you're out there, it's all millennial types. It's all millennial types. Because it's like, golfing has been something in our culture we've done for a long time. Their dads used to golf. He probably took them out once or twice and they didn't really like it because they had to be away from their video games for 3 or 4 hours. And so here you can go and you can feel like you're golfing. And it's so lame, folks. I mean, it's fun, but it's just one more reminder of just how lame we're becoming as a society. You need to go out and do like when I go golfing, I get to spend a lot of time in the woods, because I've gotten poison ivy golfing before. You know why? Because I hit my ball into the woods. And you got to go out and you got to look for it. And there's a lot of walking. You got sand traps and you got water hazards and all these things. And listen, golfing is not the most rugged, manly sport there is. Okay. I mean, old ladies go golfing. But then today we're so weak. The kind of golf that's popular today is this Top Golf, millennial golf stuff. It's just a reminder of where we're at. And if you go to Top Golf, I'm not mad at you. I'll probably go there again sometime. It's a fun thing to do, but it will never replace real golf. If you think you're getting a thrill from that, go play real golf. It'll be harder. You're going to have challenges, but I promise you, it'll be more fulfilling. Especially as a man, it'll be more fulfilling. I don't get any man fulfillment from going to Top Golf. I get absolutely none. It is entertaining and all that, but it's not the same thing. So, all these virtual things, they're money makers' attempt at fulfilling a desire that we have in a way where they can make money. And all I'm saying is that's just proof that we do need these things. One of the things that I've done too that I enjoy, my boys have the virtual Oculus thing. I don't know if you ever used one of those. But one thing that is really cool, you go on there, you can go on YouTube, and you can just search for 360 videos where you can look in every direction, and you can go to all kinds of cool places. And I'll tell you, the other day, I don't remember what video it was, but it was like one of the tallest waterfalls in the world. And it was this amazing video. It was a 360 video shot from a helicopter of this just gigantic waterfall. It was beautiful. I don't even remember where it was at, but I was watching that on the virtual reality thing, and it was really cool just getting to see all that. And but you know what? There was just something in me. It's like, man, I would love to go there in real life. I'd love to experience that. I would love to get to the top of that mountain rather than watching a video of it through a helicopter. And I'm glad I'm able to do that. I'm glad I'm able to experience it that way. I've gone on there too, and I've looked at places in Israel and a lot of other places that places I've never been to that I'd like to visit. And you can put those on. You can stand there, and it's like you're there. You can look in any direction. It's really cool. But you know what? It'll never replace actually going there and doing that. And so these things are in man. Every man has a desire to just get out and to explore and to subdue, to do something dangerous, to take a chance, to kill an animal, to cut down a tree, whatever it is, that's a part of who you are. And unfortunately, these things are not being advertised. What's being advertised today, where people are spending their whole lives, is on phones, in front of computers, in front of television sets. And all it's doing when I watch those videos, it just creates a longing for me to go to these places. I love traveling. I love visiting places. I want to experience these places. Everybody has their things they like to spend money on. Me, if I just had a ton of extra money to spend on stuff, I wouldn't put it towards cars and toys and things like that. I'm traveling. I want to go see places. I want to go experience things. So that's something that's in all of us. And what's happening, we are confining ourselves only to the things that our country promotes. That's all some of you do on social media. The only thing you post on social media that you do is what everyone is posting on social media that they do. And what are they doing? They're just following the advertisers where they tell you to go. People rarely do things unique and on their own. And you got to understand that there are some things in you that have that desire to get out, and you just watching these things on television, on computers and stuff, all it's doing is it's creating even more of a longing, I think, to do these things. And if you do not get any fulfillment from that, what's going to happen is you're going to start longing after the things that the media that you're watching is telling you to long for. And you want to know what people are longing for today? Money. They're longing for, fame, prestige, the popularity, all the stuff that people are trying to get on social media. You know what else people are longing for today and being consumed with are sexual things, immoral things. Why? Because it's all over the television. That's all they're seeing. And so, if you're just sitting there all day long, and a majority of your life is just watching things that can be seen on a screen. I don't know the numbers on this stuff, but we know a huge portion of this stuff is sexual in nature. And then we wonder why everybody's getting addicted to pornography and why people are struggling with lust and immorality. We wonder why all these things are happening. And I'll tell you what, it's because that's all they're getting. The things that they're longing for are the things that mankind or, social media and the television is telling you to long after. I'm telling you, You have something in you that needs to be fulfilled that God put in there. And a lot of these things are that desire to explore, that desire to subdue the earth and to have dominion over the animals and over the birds and over the land. That is in you. And if you would go out and fulfill those things, I believe you would find a satisfaction from that to where you wouldn't be interested in the junk that this world's promoting. And so I'm telling you, as parents, be careful in trying to protect your children so much that you start suppressing good natural desires that they have. And instead you replace their desire to just get out and be a boy. You point their desires towards these things. That's very dangerous and is going to get you in a lot of trouble. And so I think our problem is I don't think we understand. I don't think a lot of times, it's mothers that are raising the boys. I don't think they understand, what's in them as boys. And so moms are very protective. That's a part of your nature. And that's why you need dad there to every once in a while say, all right, dear, you know what? Chill out. And mom's going to say, but he might break his arm. And dad's supposed to be there to say, I know. I hope he doesn't, but he needs to do these things. He needs to go ride his bike. He needs to dig a hole, climb something. He needs to tear something down. They need to build something. These are all normal desires. And I think what we have done in our culture is we've just taken all those things away. And as a result of that, it's created that longing is still there, but people are going after the drugs, the sex, all these other things that just create more trouble. And so I think if we understand this, it'll cause us to, on purpose, do some of these things that we just don't really do. You'll take your kids out to the parks and state parks and let them go hike the trails and let them go climb some mountains and things. In fact, I almost use a picture of my boys where they were kind of up in a cave. That was when we went out to the caves in Iowa. And my boys are 19 and 20, but they're men and they're climbing and exploring everywhere. And my wife's freaking out the whole time. Why? Because she's a mom. She kept thinking they were going to get killed, kept thinking they were going to get hurt. And, I'm just kind of like, guys need to explore. They need to get to the hard parts of the cave to get to. They need to get to the place that are kind of off the trail and off limits. I just kind of let them do it because I get it. I understand that. And he's like, well, why weren't you doing it? Well, I'm 41. I've got a little more of a survival instinct. When I get hurt, it takes me a lot longer to heal. I also have the responsibility of a wife and all these kids to take care of. And so, those are the things that actually calm you down, but when you're younger, you don't have that, but they will eventually, eventually, when your boys get married and they realize I'm responsible for this woman, the kids start coming. I'm responsible for this kid. When they've got a job, especially if it's a physical one, man, if I get hurt, I can't do that job. Those are the things that naturally calm us down and keep us from killing ourselves, which is probably what we would do, if we didn't, if we didn't have those responsibilities. But either way, it's not a bad thing. Your kid does not need medicated because he's always wanting to run out of the house. He's doing that because he's a boy. He wants to subdue the earth. Your street is a wondrous, magical place in his mind that needs to be explored. And you need to try to find a way to fulfill that. I think if you do, you're going to help him out, and you're not going to raise a little doughboy gamer or some little queer effeminate sissy. You don't want to do that. So that's all I'm going to say on this, but I hope this was a help. I hope you will help you recognize some things about yourself, and I hope you do something to go out and fulfill those things and be a man. So God bless you. Thank you for watching. We will see you all next week.